The ISIS graphic novel Indiegogo is live. Help me publish the first comic book featuring the goddess next door by putting in a pledge today. As a publisher, I am deeply troubled by this new trend of so-called documentaries. And the reason why I am deeply troubled by this new trend of so-called documentaries is because none of these so-called documentaries, such as You're Leaving Neverland, which is supposed to give us allegations regarding the sexual abuse Michael Jackson was alleged to have participated in, or You're Surviving R. Kelly, which chronicles the sexual abuse R. Kelly was alleged to have participated in, show any sort of objectivity, and as I see it, are not real documentaries, because when it comes down to a documentary film, the filmmaker is clearly trying to present a documentation of the times in their film, and they're trying to present an objective commentary in their film. And this is a big problem with these new so-called documentaries, is that the filmmakers clearly are not being objective, and they are not giving us a fair assessment of the facts. Now, when I take a critical look at You're Surviving R. Kelly and You're Leaving Neverland, they do not come across to me as documentary films. No, instead, what I see here are clearly propaganda pieces designed to be hit pieces, designed to malign the image of black men, such as your Michael Jackson and your R. Kelly. And these hit pieces are designed to turn the public against this individual by trying them in a court of public opinion, instead of allowing due process under the law to take its course. Because under our United States Constitution, a individual is supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. And what these documentaries try to do is they try to sway people's public opinion against an individual in the hopes of maligning their image and their reputation, and persuading the public to see this individual in a dark light that, as I see it, presents a false narrative regarding that individual. For example, with the Finding Neverland documentary, I clearly see how the filmmakers ignore many of the facts that have been made regarding Michael Jackson's alleged sexual abuse of children. Now, you had the Federal Bureau of Investigation, a department of the federal government, come to Michael Jackson's home, do an investigation, and find no criminal activity. Moreover, we had the Los Angeles prosecutor's office file charges against your Michael Jackson, and your Michael Jackson was acquitted of all criminal activity. So, as I see it, the facts in the case, which your producers of this documentary seem to omit from their film, show how these individuals clearly are not being objective in their presentation of the facts. Just like the producers of the Surviving R. Kelly film show how they are not being objective about the facts. Because when we look at the critical evidence of the R. Kelly case, we see how the female's parents were oftentimes complicit in enabling R. Kelly's sexual deviancy, and how they supported R. Kelly in his sexual deviancy. And any objective publisher like myself, they're going to show both sides of the story, because they're going to want the audience to draw their own observations and come to their own conclusions. However, people who produce propaganda, what they want you to do is see things from a slanted, one-sided perspective and agree with their opinion. And that is not journalism. That is yellow journalism. That is tabloid journalism. And that flies in the face of what our Constitution designed for freedom of the press. Now, when the founding fathers created the Constitution and went to protect the freedom of the press, they wanted to protect people from yellow journalists who would go out here and use the press to try to demonize people, malign their image, and try to slander their image by creating a false narrative to make that person out to be a villain. And I see the racism here as related to these documentaries because both You're Surviving R. Kelly and You're Leaving Neverland, both of these documentaries are designed to malign the image of these black men and then use them as proxies to then go after other rich and prominent black men in an effort to try to destroy their reputations and then try to file civil lawsuits against those black men in the hopes of getting resources out of them. And that's what I believe these documentaries are a part of a larger campaign. So when I look at these so-called documentaries, I do not see anything that meets any sort of journalistic standard. And that's why people need to start standing up and fighting against this type of journalism, because when you present a documentary, again, you are supposed to be not only presenting your point regarding the individual, you're supposed to be presenting a counterpoint. And both points are supposed to be objective so that when people watch the documentary and they watch the points you're trying to make, they then can draw their own conclusions regarding the argument you make for a case and then approach that topic from what they see in the information objectively. Now, when I was doing research for my new nonfiction book, The Man Crisis, I approached the subject objectively. And when I was writing the book, I not only took sources from men, but I also took sources from feminists. I took statistics from the government. I took statistics from numerous other information sites, and I compiled all this data so that I could present an objective observation regarding the crisis regarding men here in America. These so-called documentarians, they're not presenting you with that type of objectivity, nor are they trying to give you a balanced picture that will allow you to draw your own observation and come to your own conclusion. And that's not, again, what a person who makes a documentary wants you to do. They want to shine a light on a subject. However, as they're shining the light on the subject, they are also showing you the dark on the subject as well. So they're not going out of their way to say, oh, Michael Jackson did this. They're going to show also evidence of the prosecutor's office, which clearly showed, again, with their acquittal of Michael Jackson, that there's no crime committed. And the FBI also saw that there was no crime committed. And they're also going to make a point that the alleged victims lied on several occasions in the documentary, because the individuals who made these allegations, they're saying that Michael Jackson did all this stuff, but it seems like they only got angry about the things after they got rejected from a Las Vegas show where they were supposed to be featured with a Michael Jackson event. They were supposed to be some sort of event. One of them got rejected, and then all of a sudden, 12, 13 years later, we get these allegations of sexual abuse. Now, as I see it, if these allegations, again, did happen, again, why didn't this individual go to the prosecutor's office back then when the original victim, who they were using to go after Michael Jackson, was making their testimony? Because it would have reinforced their case then. So I'm seeing holes in this guy's story, and it's also said that this person lied on several occasions regarding your Michael Jackson. So I see holes in that story as related to the Michael Jackson case because, again, one individual is lying, another one recanted several years later. after one of his parents committed suicide. So it's clear to me that based on the evidence presented from an objective source, we clearly see the FBI and the Los Angeles Prosecutor's Office, there was no sexual abuse perpetrated by your Michael Jackson. The individuals could not identify Mr. Jackson's body. They could not identify his male anatomy. So I look at this whole propaganda campaign, and what's really sad to me is I see so many people all over the world falling for this propaganda, and I believe that this propaganda is a part of a further social engineering campaign, because if they can go out here and get you to demonize this black man based on simple propaganda that they come out here with no facts checked, it allows them to go out here, these mainstream media companies, and manipulate you into believing things that aren't true. So when I look at these documentaries, I see a social engineering campaign to get you to start buying into fake news, as they call it, because if you can believe you're surviving R. Kelly, or you can believe this Leaving Neverland, you will start buying into fake news. So that's what I see coming from this whole Michael Jackson, R. Kelly, and all of these documentaries, which are just nothing more than propaganda hit pieces in disguise. And what's sad is most American people just don't have the critical thinking skills to look at this propaganda disguised as a hit piece and see it for the propaganda it is, and start attacking these media companies for presenting them with this propaganda, which is basically fake news. And that's what I believe Americans need to do in the case of these so-called documentaries, is call out this fake news for what it is, because it's clear to me that this is being used as part of a larger campaign, and most Americans, they need to wake up to what's going on with this type of media. Now, when I look at this whole case critically, I again see a major problem with our media, because they're sitting here having people like Oprah Winfrey come out here talking about how Michael Jackson is a monster, but this same woman was standing at the side of your Harvey Weinstein, a man who was alleged to have participated in numerous sexual assaults and sexual violence against women. But your Oprah Winfrey, who was so adamant about going after Michael Jackson and trying to find the victims of Michael Jackson's alleged abuse, says absolutely nothing about all of the women who were alleged to have been abused by your Harvey Weinstein. And I find it interesting that there was all this effort to produce these documentaries to malign the image of your R. Kelly and your Michael Jackson, but there are no documentaries in production saying that we need to survive Stephen Collins, we need to survive Harvey Weinstein, we need to survive Kevin Spacey, we need to survive many of these white men out here, and there's no documentaries out here talking about how children need to survive the growing trend of white female teachers who have been started to being prosecuted for the sexual statutory rape of young boys. I find it interesting there's so much silence regarding these white female teachers who participate in the statutory rape of young teenage boys, and there's no documentary on that, and there's no documentary about institutions where sexual deviancy is a social norm, like many of America's churches. Where are the documentaries on this if we are objective and passionate about stopping sexual harassment and sexual assault and sexual violence against people? Because as I see it, if you're serious about stopping these things, you're going to make an objective documentary, and that's what we're not seeing right now. Because when I look at these so-called documentaries, I don't see any sort of research. I don't see any sort of presentation of fact. I don't see any sort of presentation of point and counterpoint to reinforce the argument. And when you go out here and you produce a documentary, these are the things you need to prove your argument. Because anybody who does a documentary or any sort of nonfiction, the first thing they need to do is their research. And it's clear to me that these producers, they're not doing objective research, they're doing subjective research, and subjective research is all part of propaganda, because propaganda is designed to stimulate people's emotions, and it's designed to make people react instead of respond. A documentary based on objective fact is designed to make you think, and it's designed to make you think because you are getting an observation of the facts of the point that the person is making in the argument and the counterpoint from the individuals who have an opposing position. So at the end of the documentary, you would come out from an objective perspective of a better understanding of both sides, and then after seeing both sides, you would be allowed an opportunity to draw your own conclusion. And what I see here with your Surviving R. Kelly and your Leaving Neverland is a trend towards promoting propaganda as media and promoting the idea in people's minds that propaganda is actual media, propaganda is actual news. And this is a very scary trend because this is what the Nazis used in Germany to demonize Jews and then use that as a springboard to promote campaigns to go after Jewish people. So I see this trend of R. Kelly's and Michael Jackson's as part of a sinister campaign to go after black people, and it's the kind of yellow journalism Americans need to stand up against, because this is not media, this is propaganda, and propaganda needs to be called out for what it is. Because propaganda is about stimulating people's emotions, riling them up, and then having them go out here and push campaigns which violate our First Amendment, such as the so-called Mute R. Kelly, and what many people are doing to Michael Jackson on radio stations. They're not playing his music, or what they're trying to do with Bill Cosby, where they take his television shows off the air. This is all, again, violations of our First Amendment, violations of our free speech, and what they want to do is use taking away the rights of a prominent celebrity as a test to see if they can get away with taking away the rights of we the people. So we the people need to start getting a better understanding of our country, a better understanding of our Constitution, because when you look at media like these so-called documentaries, they are being designed to take your rights away, and they're being designed to manipulate you to believe something that's not true. So when I look at these documentaries, I don't see any sort of documentation of fact, any sort of documentation of sources. All I see is somebody's opinion, and opinions just aren't facts. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to help me fund my ISIS graphic novel Indiegogo, you may do so by clicking the link in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.